Good morning. Welcome again to another edition of Mike and Mike in the morning here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, Pittsburgh's version of Mike and Mike in the morning, mic'd up with Mike Asti and, of course, Mike Vukovcan joining me here on Pittsburgh Sports Live as we're going to go through a series of a few topics and hit you again on what's happening right now in the Pittsburgh sports scene and beyond. Is this now Thursday's edition of Mic'd Up, our second together here, March 4th, 2020.
To come back.
Yeah.
I didn't scare you away for the first time.
No, I'm pretty tough to get rid of. So I'm still around. You're still keeping me around. So we're going to be back at it again here in the morning, again, swigging our coffee. And we want to also make this clear that this broadcast, as well as everything we do here with Mic'd Up on PSL and PSN, is brought to you thanks in part to Martin Lawn Service. Again, all your lawn care needs, hit up Martin Lawn Service. The sign there right behind Mike's head there in the video, 412-849-5894 is their number. As I said, we're going to go through a series of topics and do it a little quicker than some of our other shows here on PSL or some of the other morning shows out there. So this is Pittsburgh's Mic'd Up. We're going to start things off with some controversy around Joe Haden and controversy kind of in his reply to us. So we posted a story. I actually posted a story on Steelers Now about John Clayton, a long-tenured NFL insider, telling 93.7 The Fan that Joe Haden and Vince Williams as well likely to be cut by the Steelers. Joe Haden didn't like it too much and replied and quote tweeted us saying, kind of alluding to that not being accurate. We're going to discuss that. We're also going to talk about some news around JuJu Smith-Schuster, who just seemingly can't stay out of the news for maybe the wrong reasons. We'll get our thoughts there in a moment. And then controversy around the NFL that's kind of under the radar right now, but I imagine is going to boom pretty soon if they make this decision. With the NFL now deciding, there's some rumblings, they're going to decide to revert back to the old format of the NFL sudden death that was pretty hated universally and caused them to have this current format in overtime, and then close up shop with, of course, here Pittsburgh Sports Now, the mothership, some news about a Pitt recruit, and not just any recruit. Kind of, again, more controversy around Pitt recruiting somebody and the age of this recruit. I'll just allude and tease it that way.
Well, I'm going to start it off with you here, Mike, since you wrote the story. John Clayton, everyone knows the Steelers have to cut their salary down.
Right.
The final number hasn't been determined by the NFL, so we don't know exactly how much they have to trim from their 21 salary cap, but we're looking at, depending once again also what happens with Roethlisberger, but they need to get $20-some million off the cap, more than that. And in order to do that, you got to get guys that are making money, and those are veterans. You wrote the story. Joe citing John Clayton.
Right.
Citing, we should point that out. Citing John Clayton.
Don't hate the messenger.
Yeah, exactly. Vince Williams and Joe Haden could be a couple cap casualties. Hayden said, I don't think so. Just thoughts on that. And would that be a good move? The cornerback, they've struggled with that over the years, finding reliable guys for their type of defense. Did you see enough of Joe Haden last season that tells you that he has another good year left in him?
Well, I will also get this out there because, I've covered Joe Haden for years, and I like Joe Haden. I think he's a good dude. I was happy when he got that contract to be able to stay with the Steelers, and seemingly has played well when in there for the Steelers. The concern of Joe Haden is his injury history. He's not been that healthy. He's not been able to get through a full season, and is making more money as the years go by with those incentives. If he would stay on the field, that signing bonus was nice for him, and then more years in salary. So I wouldn't be shocked if he is a casualty because, again, as you mentioned, they do need to trim that cap. That's why I kind of believe what John Clayton's selling and what he's saying. He is tapped into the NFL. He is the person that reported that. But Joe Haden with his little quote tweet, I predict they don't. I don't know. Again, this is a daily show, so we don't know. We're just reading the tea leaves and instant reacting. I don't know if he knows something that we don't. I'd imagine they're certainly not going to give him a new contract of more money. The only thing that could be happening that maybe he's alluding to is, number one, I will say, from even speaking to him directly in the past, he loves Pittsburgh. He loves playing with the Steelers. He is somebody that has been very public in terms of he loves playing for Mike Tomlin above all else. and certainly can compare that to his prior career with the Browns when they weren't like they were this past season. They were pretty lowly, and it was a very influx, chaotic organization. So he might just love Pittsburgh so much. Maybe they went to him and said, look, you've been injury prone. We know you can get it done when in there. I don't feel he can get it done for a full season. I think every now and then he can produce. But maybe they said, we need you to take a little bit less. We need to restructure this. We need to move this down. If Cam can do it, if Ben's going to do it, you got to do it too. And maybe he's cool with it. So maybe that's how he knows he's going to be there, because he's willing to take a little bit less that maybe John Clayton wasn't taking into consideration.
Yeah, that's a good point. Those guys have to realize that. And I think Haden also probably realizes that he's made a lot of money in his career.
Right.
And he doesn't have that many years left in the NFL as far as being a starting cornerback. If he goes to another place, is he going to start, or is he going to be a backup? He knows if he stays with the Steelers, he's going to have one of the starting spots lined up. The thing that I would worry about, their cornerback depth.
Yeah.
I don't consider it real good. If I had to pick,
it's not. No, you're correct.
If I had to pick Joe Haden or Steven Nelson, I'm taking Joe Haden.
And Steven Nelson got a big deal last offseason and pretty much was in the witness protection program most of the year.
Right, and then you get into Cam Sutton. So they don't. And Justin Lane was forced to play a lot last season.
Right.
I just don't know that they have.
Right.
I don't know that they're in a situation yet that they're can afford to get rid of a guy like that's a starter, considering you don't have money to go out and try to replace him.
That's the issue. If they would, I know a lot of people have also thought and been predicting that Joe Haden could be that casualty, which maybe has led to John Clayton to provide that report. I'd imagine the only thing Joe Haden could know is maybe if he's willing to take a little bit less. The conversation also, and we put a poll up on the site last week, was about Cam Sutton or Mike Hilton. It doesn't appear they can probably have both of them on this team. So which one would you prefer out of those? And we'll maybe discuss that on another show. But Haden is a veteran guy, and it also maybe is a decision in his mind that, hey, he still hasn't played in a playoff game. The man had to miss the Steelers playoff game against the Browns because of COVID. They hadn't gone in the prior years because of injuries. So he hasn't really been able to actually play in this Steelers playoff time that he thought he was entering for underachieving in COVID. So maybe he just wants to come back. We'll see. Again, Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here, mic'd up. As we're kind of getting mic'd up, you can connect the dots with our names, but also us getting fired up on some topics. It's kind of the play in with the name there. So, Mike, I do want to flip it then to stick with the Steelers. We have Joe Haden replying to us and kind of making it clear that he wants and likely going to stay with the Steelers, at least in his mind. Another player that I would say it's unlikely going to be back with the Steelers, and this has been the thought process for a couple years now, based on either the depth they have or based on who they can draft or just based on maybe the belief on him off the field and the fact that he's not been able to be a number one receiver and maybe is focused elsewhere. We don't see a tweet at us from him, but we do see a video of JuJu taking some punches, having some fun, doing some kickboxing with some kids. I will add in there, he also, which we put a post up, he's donated money to countless charities, including a scholarship fund that we have on Steelers Now. So we are fairly covering him. But What are your thoughts on JuJu in general? Because I don't think it's likely he's back. I think the money doesn't line up. But separate from that, what are just your thoughts on JuJu? And if you really want him as a Steeler at this point?
First of all, I think while he was here, he saw the way Antonio Brown left here and was sort of vilified when he left, and rightly so. Right. And I think his statements as far as wanting to come back, I think he's just trying to cover himself when he does leave. I think he wants to
nail on the head. I totally agree.
I think he realizes perception is a lot out there, and I don't think he wants to be marketability, all that. He wants to still be loved, and he probably would like to stay here, but he also is a young guy going after his first big contract in the NFL, and once again, the Steelers don't have the money, so he's not going to be back here. As far as if there was a chance he could come back here, no.
Yeah, if money's not an issue, would you want him?
If money's not an issue, regardless, I still wouldn't want him back. And it's not, I want to be very clear about this. Unlike Antonio Brown, I don't think JuJu Smith-Schuster is a bad guy. I don't. I think his heart's in the right place. Right. You could have story after story of him giving money, time, smiles to teenagers and young kids.
Went to
I think he's
prom
a
with
good guy.
somebody, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy. However, it's also a business. And we saw what happened with Antonio Brown. It led to his demise as far as the social media. JuJu is obsessed with social media, Twitter, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And there comes to a point where you just have to almost grow up too. And I know that sounds rough, but he still hasn't grown up yet. I know he's serious about the business, but he just has to cut it. And I know he doesn't want that to impact the team. He's not intending for it to impact the team, but it does. And I think the Steelers that's been a problem for them. I think one of the reasons they haven't advanced, there's too many egos on the team, too many individuals on the team, and all this social media crap. I think it leads to it. And I'm fearful from what I see in his first year. I'm fearful that Chase Claypool, I hope I'm wrong about this, but for everything I see with him, I think he's heading down the same road as those two. And it's unfortunate, and Claypool appears. And I want to be clear about that, is I'm not ripping these guys individually. I don't think they're bad people. I just don't know that they realize what a distraction they become and how it's all about me. I don't think people have, and it's about money too. Bottom line, TikTok and all that. It's about money and creating the brand and all that. But I've seen enough of JuJu. Nice guy, good receiver, not a great receiver. It's time for him to go.
I think there's no way JuJu's back. I felt that way before this past season just because of the depth on the team. And honestly, they can draft receivers with their eyes closed. That's one thing that Kevin Colbert has done better than anybody else in terms of drafting receivers every year. And I also do think there's some immaturity there. And to be fair to JuJu, he's in his early 20s still. I mean, he is a very, very young kid. You look at Chase Claypool, though, in terms of what you're saying, right after they lose to the Browns, he comes out there and says, no big deal, they're going to get slapped by the Chiefs. Nobody wanted to hear that from fans. I don't think the Rooney family, Mike Tomlin, wanted to hear it or loved it too much. You get embarrassed. I said at the time on the postgame show that it was the most embarrassing loss in franchise history, which you could argue with how embarrassing it was. And then I get you're a rookie and you may not know the history, but it just wasn't appropriate to say. You should, I mean, you don't need to be doing that. You should be upset that you lost regardless of what they do. They beat you. The Browns have bragging rights that you don't have. And it's not like anyone thought the Steelers were going to go ahead and beat the Chiefs either. So that was bad. But the tea leaves are there. And I'll say this, too, as someone who covered AB at multiple outlets here. AB is a bad person for me. I mean, maybe he's going to turn the corner. Antonio Brown, to me, is a bad guy. There's many reports that say that. Winning a championship is not going to make me think he's a better person, even though he got lucky in that regard. JuJu, I think, is a good dude. I do think he's immature and his heart's in the right place. But I think his immaturity doesn't help the team, even with his dancing on the middle of the logo in games they were losing. And I get that it didn't infect them whether they win or lose. I don't know if I think that actually impacted the field like some feel. But Cam Hayward told us in a Zoom that he didn't like having to answer to it. Well, you know how he doesn't have to answer to it if JuJu stops doing it. JuJu didn't care about others. He just wants to do what he's doing. I get it's for the brand. But he also said in that show that I won't mention, in which he mentioned how he loves Pittsburgh so much, that he also wants paid fairly.
Right.
He's not going to get that money with Pittsburgh. It's just not there, and they have tons of depth. So there's just no possible way he's back, regardless of how anyone feels, based on what we're seeing.
He's on, but next week things will get interesting when the cuts start to happen, and we'll be.
Well, that's the reported bloodbath. That's the reported bloodbath.
Yeah,
that's also what. That's been said by many national reporters.
And the other NFL story last night that's going to create a lot of headlines. So I saw it on ProFootballTalk.com. Mike Florio, he was talking about, he was looking over the league agenda as far as rules and stuff they're going to vote on for next season, personal fouls, pass interference, all that stuff. But he saw in there is the overtime rule and how they could be going back to what they had years ago, whereas the first team that scores, as opposed to if the first team scores a touchdown, the game's over, but they score a field goal, the other team gets a chance to match that. Right. Apparently they're going to be voting on and could be re-implementing the first team to score. Do you like that?
No. Simply put, I don't. Yes, it would make it entertaining. Number one, I don't think the NFL, unlike, say, Major League Baseball, which certainly maybe has an issue with people not being able to watch a full game, even though I can, the NFL has no issue with people watching games. People are going to watch all the way through. If it was 6 hours long, people would watch all the way
Right.
through. The NFL gets ratings all the way through, all day long. That's how other football ventures are able to get some ratings, even though not to the NFL's levels, because people just love football so much. It doesn't matter about the national anthem, politics, domestic violence, or anything else. People are going to watch football. People were saying years ago they didn't want to watch the Steelers anymore when they signed Mike Vick because they're a dog lover. People have been saying they don't want to watch the NFL anymore because of the national anthem, etc. All those same people are complaining about the NFL every single day on Twitter. The NFL is in the conversation now. It's part of our show every morning because everyone's obsessed. So I don't think they need to do something worrying about keeping fans. They're going to watch 6 hours if that's what it takes. Number two, I don't think it's nearly as fair. The reason why they changed to what it is now is because if you recall, and that's why the Saints picture is there, the Saints' only championship, Drew Brees' only ring, was getting into a Super Bowl by beating Brett Favre and the Vikings on that great year Favre had. He did choke at the end throwing that pick, but if there was the current rule, even with Favre's interception, Minnesota would have had an opportunity to answer that. And people were so mad thinking they didn't even have an opportunity to answer. Favre throws one pick and the game's basically over because you don't have to go anywhere. And they just could kick the field goal there. And they changed the rule the next season. I don't get why changing it back makes sense. It doesn't seem like anyone's upset about that out of all the rules that exist. The one rule that I hate that can be a topic for another day too is being able to review pass interference. That seems like if you don't call it to me, you leave it alone, even if it's a bad call, it sucks, which also involves the Saints. I don't want to have things that are reviewed just off pure judgment calls. If it's not a call, you shouldn't be able to review something and then be able to say now it is. But that's the only thing I would change back. I don't get this, and no, I don't like this.
Yeah, I'm going to show my age here, Mike, but if I was I've stated this before on Twitter. If I was the commissioner of all sports,
the
thing that I would change about every single sport, I hate it. It bothers me. Replay. I would eliminate. Replay. Let the refs, whatever call they make, it slows down the game. It makes the refs worse. It just impacts the whole game. Crappy refs, just the eye in the sky, all that stuff. Whatever it is, you call it.
We still get bad calls. We still get controversial calls.
Yeah, they still miss them. Yeah. And I'm saying not just for football, everything. Right. College football, right. Baseball, hockey, whether it went over the line or not, all that stuff. NBA, get rid of replay. I think that would. I think it would make fans across the country happy.
I'm not against that, by the way, and so I'll agree with my elder Mike here on our Pittsburgh version of Mike in the Morning here and Mic'd Up. What are your quick thoughts, though, on that rule? Would you want that to be back to Sunday? I get the entertainment value, but you're taking basically whoever has the ball first, very likely to score and win this game because you only have to go 10, 20 yards, a couple first downs, then kick a field goal based on some of these kickers. They can boom it now. We have kickers that actually
this is surprising for me, but I really don't have a strong opinion on that. I really don't. I see arguments. I don't. I
was thinking you would because you were the one who brought it up actually for a talk.
No, because I know it's yearly something that people argue about, and there's always good both sides to it. I can live with it either way. I do. I agree with the part that defense is part of the game, and tell your defense to make a stop. I get that, but then I also get the fact that team goes down there, scores, the other offense should get it. I think both of them. If I had to do a vote, I would say though to go back to the sudden death elimination for overtime. I would go that way.
Okay, well, that's a possibility. We'll see if they do it. There's been other rules that have been considered that didn't actually happen. It's kind of a surprising decision right now out of everything that they could be discussing. The NFL would go in that direction. I wouldn't be a fan of going back. The only compromise I would levy that I think would be better is if you have the team with the ball first, score a touchdown, maybe that could end the game because then you have to play defense a little bit. I don't think it should be just any points at all, so a field goal shouldn't win it for me right away. Maybe I could see a touchdown, which is closer to what they do now, even though they let both teams have the ball. I could maybe see if the team scores a touchdown because they have to move the field, then you blame the defense. But I'm not down with one first down and a 55-yard field goal winning the game, which is exactly what could happen and did happen before and led Breeze to his only ring. Without that rule, who knows if he ever had won a championship. Mike Vukovcan, Mike Asti here, mic'd up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. Smash that subscribe button, bottom of this video, free to do so. Thanks to our sponsors, which include Martin Lawn Services there, that sign behind Mike V, as we learned throughout the show, my elder Mike, even though I do agree with him, do agree with him a lot of the time. To close up shop here, this is a show that's also posted on Pittsburgh Sports Now, so we're going to touch on Pitt and Pitt recruiting an 8th grader, Mike. And just in general, obviously we discussed the future of the Pitt basketball program and even the Pitt football program on recent shows, but recruiting an 8th grader, and we've seen this before, USC in football used to, Pete Carroll recruited 8th graders constantly during that dynastic period. So this is not unique to what's going on now, but just overall, do you have a problem? And you have kids that play sports that someday might be, I don't know if they're going to be recruited, but that's their dream.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's their dream. That's your dream. You're trying to get them there. So what are your thoughts as somebody who maybe will go down this road in the future? We have a colleague who's gone down this road not too long ago that Pitt fans know about Pitt recruiting a legit 8th grader. Is that too young? Is that inappropriate? Or do they need to just get in there first or else someone else is going to grab them?
It's done. Jim Harbaugh, I believe, recruited I did a story on the kid because Pitt offered him when he was in 9th grade. I believe Harbaugh offered a kid from Michigan, a quarterback, when he was in 7th grade.
It happens all the time. Yeah, this is not exclusive to Pitt. This is not a criticism of Pitt at all. Just
I don't. We're talking about the issue, not so much Pitt doing it.
Right.
I think it's stupid, just because even if the kid wanted to say, I'm going to commit, his scholarship isn't going to be committable. It's just it's almost a publicity thing with the kid. I just think it's a waste of time. There's not they offer kids that are seniors that don't have committable scholarships. Right. There's no way that they're offering a kid in 8th grade, and plus, all that does is we talked about JuJu and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, ego.
It gets to the kid's head.
Yeah.
He carries it over to the team. I got a scholarship. I'm in 8th grade. They have more things to worry about as a kid than to have people recruiting. Pitt's not going to actively recruit this guy. They offered him basically all what they're doing. It's a wide receiver from Dallas, Texas.
Right.
All this is telling this kid and his family is the fact that Pitt thinks, or any college that any kid that gets an offer at this age, we think you're really good. Keep it up. Keep your grades up. We'll check back with you in a couple years. If things progress, we might reoffer you or let you know that the scholarship is still committable. It's more of a publicity thing and letting the kid know, hopefully, to follow your college, and that's it. But in principle, I wish they wouldn't do that because I just think there's nothing good that can come out of it.
It's kind of like keeping up with the Joneses, though. It's not a Pitt thing that everyone's kind of doing it, so you feel like you got to keep up. I think one thing that's unique that I find interesting, this is a receiver in Dallas, which is Big 12 country, so it's not normally a place that Pitt would be dipping into in terms of players they're actually going to be pulling from. I guess my other question would be, and you mentioned that great point about it not even being committable, which is a big deal that I think people get lost on that you're able to touch on so much on PSN. But what are the percentages of this kid actually ever playing for Pitt? This scholarship's not committable, but what's the percentage that he plays well, stays there, they keep in touch with him, and then they do this again in a few years? Or is he basically just maybe a fan of Pitt right now? He's going to brag to his friends and probably playing somewhere else if he keeps playing well, and someone else will give him a legit scholarship at some point. Is this even sending him down a road of having any chance of playing for Pitt? What percentage would you give him ever even being on Pitt's roster ever?
Uh, less than 1%.
Okay.
Because if he's that good, he's going to end up. You're in Texas. You're going to if
Yeah,
he's
right.
all the time, he's going to end up with one of those schools. I will say that we bring up the Texas issue. The reason this is happening is the coach that offered him is Pitt's new wide receiver coach, Brennan Marion, and is I've been reporting on over the last couple of weeks since Marion got hired. Pitt is making a big push with him in particular to expand their recruiting territory to Texas and California, those two states in particular, because
Okay.
of the amount of talent that is in those states.
Right.
And he's offered probably he got hired 2 weeks ago, Marion himself between California and Texas, he's probably offered 6 to 8 freshmen. So this is sort of in line with what he's doing. He's trying to make relationships with these kids early, and he's going to these ninth graders. He's going to keep on talking to them, or whatever legal way they're able to do that.
Yeah, especially now with the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but you can't make contact with the ninth grader, so they'll send them mail or whatever. But this is just a continuation of a recruiting pattern that Pitt is having to try to expand. But as far as your original question, no, they're who knows? That's 5 years from now. That's 5 years from now. I wouldn't bet $1 on it.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't bet your lucky dollar on that. And I do think it's interesting that Pitt's dipping in there because this is a clear point, and this is basically a fact. If Pitt would get the rejects that Oklahoma and Texas and those schools around that area normally recruit, that's fantastic for Pitt. They're probably very excited to get a kid that's really good that Texas doesn't want or can't offer a scholarship for. Pitt probably would be very happy to welcome in because that's still tons of talent. That is a hotbed in terms of talent. Those
two. I looked over the last 5 years in the NFL, the 3 states, Pitt by far the number one state that they recruit, and it's like every program in the country, is Florida.
I was going to say Florida. Yeah, if I had to guess. Florida.
The number one, the top 3 states in the NFL as far as players per state, number 1 is Florida, number 2 is Texas, number 3 is California. So that's why Pitt is making a push to, just like Florida. Yeah, is Florida going to get all the great players in Florida State? Yeah, but there's so many players in there, they can't get everybody.
No.
So that's obviously what Narduzzi's new recruiting plan is, to try to.
Yeah. Well, that's what West Virginia did years ago. They didn't do the Texas-California thing, but they dipped into Florida when they joined the Big 12. They felt like they couldn't beat out those schools for the Big 12 country, so they just went into Florida. They got Noah Devine, which was nobody thought was going to WVU until he ended up going there. So it's interesting. It's always going to be a hot button topic. It's going to be a controversial topic, but it's never going to stop. That's one thing that's not going to stop. It's going to always happen. So kudos to the kid. He can brag to his friends and probably be very annoying.
I got a scholarship. I'm in 8th grade.
Yeah, you throw that in your Twitter bio. You can throw that in, get the 8th grade girl to go to the dance with you probably off of that. So props to you, kid. But, yeah, it's very unlikely he'll be playing at Pitt. Maybe playing somewhere. I think that's the benefit and probably the hope for him and his family, that he's playing somewhere since he's already getting offers, which means he's really, really good right now. Well, that closes up shop here for Thursday morning's edition, as we're now going to take our swig of coffee and start our day. And once again, thanks to Martin Lawn Services there behind Mike, 412-849-5894, the number to call them. So that's going to do it for this edition of Mike and Mike in the Mornings, Mic'd Up, Pittsburgh's version of Mike and Mike, Mic'd Up here on Pittsburgh Sports Live. And, of course, Pittsburgh Sports Now. Check out the websites for our coverage throughout the day. And feel free to hit us up on Twitter to tell us whether you thought our takes were gold or just totally asinine and ridiculous. Either way, we welcome it. We'll see you tomorrow morning.